Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. Super pumped for you guys to be listening in and tuning in. I have Dr. Kevin Gazzara here. He's going to be sharing a lot about leadership, some insights on and techniques with LinkedIn. Stay toward the end too. I'm going to ask him some different tactical questions of how he's been able to build his audience and his masterminds and everything. So stay toward the end. That's going to be really good insights for you. Before we jump in, down below is a free gift for anybody that's listening in here. I got a free workshop for you if you're wanting to create a 6 and 7 figure online business and you're just trying to figure out how to leverage AI, build media team, sales team, leverage ads. Those are things that I'm going to be covering in this free workshop. Go check that out. Dr. Kevin, as we dive in here, I want to ask you a really good question that I ask everybody, but what is high performance? What does that look like to you? Because you've been able to mentor so many people over the decades of years here, and you're a high performer yourself with being able to leverage the impact. What does that look like? Would you describe that?
Well, Nathan, first of all, thanks for inviting me onto the show today. When I think about high performance, I spent almost 30 years in the business big corporate world. The last 18 years in high tech, and I think one of the things that most people don't think about is when they think of high performance, they think about outcome. And when I was working at Intel, spent 18 years at Intel. It was faster, better, cheaper was Intel's model for the chips, and also for kind of your work at, faster, better, cheaper. How much more can you pump out with, less people and more focus? And I think what most people think about performance is just output. And when I think about performance, I think it's a combination of the two variables of output and engagement or job satisfaction as well. What we found was that if you can really kind of get into this flow zone or being in the zone, where at the end of the day you're exhausted, but you want to come back and do more of it and be productive and creative. That's really what I think of as a high performing employee. It's not just output, but that they want to come back and do even more, right? And I'm not talking about creating a sweatshop kind of environment. What I'm talking about is that you're creating an environment that allows their creativity to flow, right? Because I think you get some of the best performance, you get the best high output, most creative things when people are highly engaged, where you have that great balance between challenge and skill. And if you can do that, you're going to get the advantage of not only highly engaged, highly productive employees, but they are going to want to stay, right? And I know that's a big challenge for many organizations because they have a high degree of turnover. And it's not just about throwing more money at them or more perks. It's really, focusing on the individual, getting a deeper understanding on what makes them tick, allowing them to do the kind of tasks that work for them, as opposed to, the traditional job description.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I want the audience to know a little bit more about you. So tell people how you serve people as well. I mean, you're an author, you're a speaker, you do masterminds. You've been in this industry for a long time. You were a coach before there was really coaches. Talk about some of what you do and how you serve people right now.
Yeah. So I think I'd start with kind of my background, so, did my undergrad work in engineering and business, went and did my MBA, and then off and did all my doctoral work on organizational leadership, and really focused around how do you build high performing teams, getting them in the zone, getting them motivated and productive. And I was fortunate enough to be able to try that out in the corporate world. And then I had a personal goal I had a personal goal and a 10-year plan, had a great mentor and coach when I was at Intel. I was managing Intel's management leadership development for the last 6 years before I retired. But I had a personal goal to retire at 50. And I was fortunate to be able to do that. And my goal was to go and give back, right? So go work with small to medium-sized companies that, didn't have $10 million budgets like I did, uh, and help them build great leaders. And so almost 18 years ago, I voluntarily made my transition from the corporate world into being an entrepreneur. I took two of my colleagues with me, Marlene Lundy and Dr. Ali Lakhani, and we started up a firm called Magna Leadership Solutions. And we offered, as you had mentioned, we do coaching, we speaking, facilitation. We have a program called our Leading Forward Academy, a 6-month program we do for companies all over the world, both virtually and in person. And then what we found was that a lot of activities, a lot of need for coaching, as we're doing, putting people through the leadership programs, that they needed a coach. So I went back to school and got all my coaching certifications and so forth for that. And so between kind of the leadership programs, we say we don't do training because training is has a has a negative connotation. That we really provide programs that are applied learning, so that you're bringing the tools in and you're using them in real time, as opposed to, a traditional. You go to a class and it's a lot of fun for 4 or 8 hours and it's a one and done. That you really find you have to have this process in place. So we've built that into what we call our GALE process, guided and applied integrated learning. And if you can do that, people can truly get the behavioral change that you're looking for. So that's kind of where we've gone. It's worked pretty well. The last 18 years, every year has been better than the last. And it's a little scary. Probably a lot of people listening to the show are either considering leaving the corporate world, or they're becoming an entrepreneur, or they've done it and they realize it's not as easy as it looks from the outside. I can't tell you how many people I get. Usually about once a month, I'll get a call from one of my colleagues, either ex-Intel or somebody I've worked with in the past, and they'll say, "Hey, I just want to do what you're doing. Can you just hire me? I'll just work one day a month, and we'll charge everybody. I'll charge them $10,000, and then I'll have the other, 30 days off or 29 days off." And being an entrepreneur, as you know so well, is not the way it works. There's a lot of things going on in the back of the stage.
I want to ask you this. There's a tip you have with hiring. Like I think of a lot of the people listening in here. They have a virtual business. They're remote entrepreneurs. They're either at starting or at scaling, and they need to hire people. Out the gate, either overseas or local, and they need to find the ways to leverage AI and systems and everything. But more often than not, they're doing everything. They need to transition to hiring people, or they know the need of hiring people. They might have some, C or B players, but they need to hire A players like themselves to replicate themselves. What are some of the challenges you've seen people with hiring, and what are the things that they should be looking at when they're looking at hiring and scaling and building the teams?
Fantastic question. It's a good surprise question for me. I didn't come prepared to talk about that. What I can tell you is that when you're we have what we call a benchmarking process that we use. So we work with different companies, particularly when they're hiring. It's not just a one-off, like they want to hire one executive, but they're hiring. Like we work with a large company that does a lot of customer service types of things, where they're hiring lots of these different types of agents. And what we found is we work with a big company here in North Phoenix that had a turnover rate in like 33%,
Wow, that is
and the problem was it would take about 18 months to get someone fully up to speed, and anywhere between, some was early as 2 weeks into it, but most of the time, on average, it was about 6 months into it, people were quitting. Right. And they were never able to get everybody up to speed, for the call center. So what we did was we went in, pretty simple process. We use a whole series of validated assessments. And what we said is, we want to give me your 4 to 6 top players, right? The people that have been here a long time, and are consistently kind of delivering the performance that you want, not only from a quantity perspective as far as number of calls, also from a quality perspective of, not getting those return calls over and over and over again. And we pull them into a room, whether it's done virtually or live, and then we run them through a series of about probably 3 or 4 assessment tools, right, to kind of get an understanding of what's the kind of the personality because you can hire for skill, but if you don't have the right personalities kind of and the things that engage them, you're going to get this revolving door. So we do the benchmark. We identify the different behaviors, the values, the task preferences, kind of emotional intelligence levels. And what it does is it creates a profile for a high performing individual that they can hire. And what we found from the last one that we had done was they were hiring people that were basically on the phone telling the people that we're not going to extend your benefits, right? So that was making that they had to make that determination, but most of it was your shorter long-term benefits are going to expire, and you need to make plans for whatever it is depending on the challenge, the mental or physical challenges that you've had. And what they were doing is the company beforehand was hiring people that are highly empathetic, right? You would think, well, okay, yeah, you want somebody that's really empathetic. But when you put someone that has a high degree of empathy on the phone, and every day that they have to tell dozens of people, by the way, your benefits are going away, or
Yeah,
they're going
that's
to go away
harder.
shortly, or whatever, it was just killing them, right?
Mhm.
But that was management's perspective of what we had to hire. And what we found was all of the higher performers, um, it, it, they they didn't have zero empathy, but what they had is they had some of the other um, types of behaviors and values and task preferences that essentially balanced out the empathy. They certainly were great listeners. They had a degree of empathy, but because it wasn't an extreme for them, because originally the people they're getting the turnover, they're hiring for extreme empathy, super empathetic with people, that it was just killing them, and that's why they just couldn't last more than
Mhm.
a couple months, because every night they go home and it's like, man, yeah, I tell people they're not going to get their monthly payment, and they have to figure out whether they need to move or they're going to get evicted, and so forth. So once we did that, and they started hiring against this new benchmark, and we created the behavioral questions. Uh, we were able to we couldn't get the turnover to zero, but we got it to, I think, around 7%. And that ultimately, because they were hiring so many of these agents, was worth probably like $1.5 million to them.
Yeah. Yeah, hiring the right people is an important part. I want to kind of shift gears and ask you, you've been able to build you have 14,000 followers on YouTube. You have over 30,000 followers on, Facebook and at Twitter, and on, over 20, almost 23,000 on LinkedIn. What's been your strategy to reach that amount of people online?
A great question. And I think one of the first questions, so I think I mentioned to you earlier, one of the things that I do is I run a mastermind session. Actually, most of them are all ex-Intel people, all the people I've worked with. I've done this
Interesting.
for the last 12 years. There's about 50 of us. Once a month, I manage this mastermind sessions. We all get together to kind of basically share ideas and so forth. And we usually get, maybe, 4 or 5 new ones each year. We just had 4 or 5 new people just join the group in the beginning of the year. And one of the first questions that they always ask them is like, this whole social media stuff, do I really need to do that? Like, what? Tell me, like, how much money have you made just doing social media? And from our perspective, and I know and you probably are more of the expert on this than I am. What we've done is, what we recognized is, early on when we first started the firm, we hired a virtual assistant, and then she helped us, 15, 16 years ago, kind of get into the social media to real. And the question people ask is, so how much, like if I, put this amount of time and this amount of money, do I get a 10x or 100x return on investment? How do I do that? And, and the bottom line is, I think what we have found is that what social media does is it keeps the search engines happy, right? Consistency, good content, target audience, and so forth. And for all of the X, Facebook, LinkedIn's the big one that we use. All of those are ones that I think keep the search engines happy. So when people are looking for us, um, they can find us. It gets us higher up, oftentimes many times on the front page. I think the other thing that we do for anyone that hasn't done this, and this seems to be a surprise to everyone, particularly in our mastermind group, is that if you don't have a Google business page, that's like the first thing you got to do. It's so easy to do. It's free. Obviously, the Google algorithm likes that, and then posting. Really, it likes photos, it likes imagery, it likes articles. So we post on all of those on a regular basis, and that just seems to grow our audience. And I think the best thing I can tell you is one of the customers we've had over the last 5 years has followed us on Facebook. Didn't know him or the company, followed us. We post usually management leadership articles, a couple a day on all of the different social venues. We don't use Instagram or Pinterest for those, but we use the other ones, work particularly well. And he was following us. And when they were ready and they had this particular need and this growth spurt, and they needed to hire more people and train their leaders, I got a call out of the blue, and he said, "Hey, I've been following you on your social media for the last 10 years. I really like the stuff that you guys are doing. We have a particular need. Would you be interested or available to come in and propose a leadership program for us?" We said, "Sure." And that was a program we did for all their sites around the world, several hundred managers. And financially, it was just a very, very big ticket item. We had a great experience with it. In fact, to the point where the company, if anybody wants to search, it's SACHEM, SACHEM. If you go on their site, they even did a whole web page just to talk about how transformational the program was that we did with all their managers and all their sites around the world. So back to the social media is keep it happy, keep it fed, use visuals, make sure it's pertinent, particularly now with AI. You can, and if you're not a particularly great writer, I'm not saying use AI for doing all the writing, but it's a great help to be able to tell your story. And if you do that on a regular basis, over time, you're going to find, better search engine hits, as well as opportunities like we've had that have really come out of feeding the social media monster.
Yeah. Do you guys leverage ads, or is it just free content that you've really been able to build out?
We have never done an ad. Yeah.
That's interesting. Talk about your outreach, though, that you've done on LinkedIn, because you've been able to do some cool aspects of that.
Yeah. So I don't tell anyone about the ads, like they're good or bad. We have never done that. I know people that have done it that have been incredibly successful with them. And I know people that have done it where they've sunk a lot of money into ads and it hasn't gotten them the ROI. And what we've decided was, we're a small firm that we just wanted to, have a nice building business, but we're not out there to kind of take over the world. LinkedIn has been the number one place for us to find clients. And we wrote a book called Ready, Set, Get Hired. And actually I did this with one of my graduate students. In addition to doing the Magna leadership stuff, I've been a professor at 6 different universities. When I was teaching at Arizona State in their executive master's program for sustainability leadership for about 5 years, one of my graduate students, master's grads, she had gotten laid off. She had been in this job for a long time, worked in the oil and gas industry, and then for whatever, it was probably about 5 years ago, whatever happened, this was, I think, before the pandemic. Um, Basically, she got downsized, and she was a pretty senior executive. And she called me and said, "Hey, I know that this has happened. I know that you would be a good resource. I liked you as a professor. Um, what could you help me to do this?" And I thought, well, this is really interesting. We have a process that we use to mine LinkedIn to find executives that would be interested in talking to us. And I said to her, her name was Rita. I said, "Rita, I think you can do the same thing for you to find a job. I haven't tested the method, but I will coach you through this method." And I probably worked with her for probably about a year. I said, under one condition, like when you're done and you land that Nirvana job, which she was able to do through mining LinkedIn, that you write the book, that I'll work with you, but you essentially tell your story about how it started from, being downsized to finding this new job. So she wrote the book. She wanted to co-publish. I said, "No, you did most of the work. I did most of the editing and so forth." So it's by Rita Creasy Reed, and Kevin Gazzara, rather than both of us. So, but in Ready, Set, Get Hired, it's a very simple process. One of the things we found, and hopefully people listening, is if you're trying to mine anything, whether it's social media or particularly LinkedIn, the big challenge is that getting people to talk to you, particularly if, our target market is executives, CEOs, presidents of companies, getting them to even having a conversation with you. What we found before the Ready, Set, Get Hired process was impossible. No matter what you did, contacting them and emailing them, whatever, getting a conversation with them, because people just don't like to be sold to, what was impossible. So the process that we use, that's all outlined in the book. It has, by the way, it has all of our scripts in there. So we give everything away to hopefully make people. And I've used this with many, many individuals, and it's generally, I haven't had anybody where it hasn't been successful. But the bottom line is, number one thing is you don't sell. You never sell to people on LinkedIn or in social media. Basically, it's about sharing your expertise, making connections for them, having interactions, having conversations with them, and ultimately you want to move from a push to a pull. So the Ready, Set, Get Hired process is basically, we write articles on a regular basis as we're focusing on different topics. We go into our LinkedIn, and I might send out a couple hundred invitations to the appropriate people. Like we did uh, 2 articles on, how do you, for plant managers, for people in manufacturing. So how do you hire and retain the best? And we had so much interest. So we said, "Hey, we're writing an article. We'd like to kind of make you famous, and get a quote from you from the article. Would you do a 15-minute Zoom conversation with us?" We recorded. I look for snippets there of that we can use. We make them the kind of star of the article, and then ultimately what they do is they send it to their LinkedIn, right? And then more people want to connect with us and so forth. So it's kind of a self-feeding system. But I think, Nathan, I think the big thing for us is we have a quick 15-minute conversation with them. We get most of the stuff in the first 5 minutes or so. And at the end of the conversation, we just say to them, "Thank you for being just so generous with your time. Tell me the challenges that you have, that I can either send you an article or written a bunch of ebooks, or there's some tools that I know, or there's a process, or I can even make connections for you for people." And what we found is almost 100% of the executives do a complete dump of all the challenges that they're having with their companies, with their organizations, with their managers. And obviously we do the recording, right? We, put it into AI, it does us a summary and so forth. And then we put those individuals that have been in our articles and that we've had conversations with. First of all, no selling. And as things come up, we have the different topics they're interested. So if I have a new article or a process where I've met somebody, hey, I just talked to this person. There's one of the people in my mastermind who's an expert in resilience, right? He's actually just created this new resilience tool. For those people that I have in the database that basically says they would be interested, I just feed them on a regular basis, send 20 messengers out. Hey, this is something new from our discussion. I think you might be interested in it. I hope you find this useful. If you have one more information, give me a call. You'll send it out to 20, 30 people. And one or two will actually send a note back. Hey, this is really interesting. Could I use this with my team? Or can you connect me with this other person? Whatever. And you get this kind of organic conversation happening.
Yeah.
And you don't, and you really get that pull rather than what I think many people try. I'd love to hear your experience, but my experience has been I get at least one or two a day of someone where I've made a connection with them, and instantaneously it's like, you got to buy this product, or, you have to, I've got this $97 webinar that I'm going to do tomorrow, or you need to come to this. I just got one on, you need to come for this 3-day event in Austin. And we've never even had a conversation. Right. So those for me instantly just get deleted. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the ready, set, get hired method. And I've used this for coaching people that are looking to move out of the corporate world, people that have gotten downsized. I even used it with a recent college graduate from ASU. He had kind of contacted me. He had taken a position, got a degree in supply chain management, but couldn't find an exact match. So he had taken another position at a trucking company doing some dispatching and scheduling and so forth. And we use this process for him to build his LinkedIn following, to get to the right people. We got him to write some articles, and voila,
Yeah.
people that come back to us like, hey, well, you and I had talked, you wrote about this article. There's a position that's coming up. And since, they've had this face-to-face conversation, and he had kind of made them famous by putting them into the article, people have a degree of trust that, you're not going to get a sales pitch from me, and I'm just going to be helpful, because ultimately, you want to play the long game.
Because of time's sake, but I really want to hear your leadership tips, though. You have
Okay.
a series of, I think it was 7 tips or 7 P's or something like that. Can you give
Well,
us a high overview of what that is there?
sure. So let me give you, I'll give you the couple leadership tips, and then I'll give you the 7 P's of what I call being how to be a successful entrepreneur, kind of what we found.
Yeah.
But let me give you my passion. I've been a leadership professor at 6 different universities. I've taught from undergrad to grad to a lot of doctoral students. Written several curriculums on leadership for 4 different universities of the 6 that I've been at. I'll give you some high level types of tips that we teach in our Leading Forward program. I think the first thing is, the best leaders really build more leaders. That's the first thing, right? That they indeed are focused on us more than me, right? Doesn't mean you don't build yourself, but the best leaders really are building more leaders to kind of take the message out, rather than them being kind of what they would call the great man theory. Like, I'm the best, I'm going to continue being the best, I'm going to build me, and everybody's going to be dependent on me. That's hostage taking more than anything else. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, if you look at our leadership model, which is, it's a three-part reinforcing cycle. The best leaders know themselves. 3 commandments of leadership is know thyself, right? So it's a deeper understanding of my behaviors and values and emotional intelligence, and really doing some good work on me, right? So that I can help others. And then once once you go through know thyself, then you need to understand others, right? And make connections with them, putting them in the right place, kind of like what we've done with our benchmarking. And then the third element of the reinforcing cycle is you need to initiate and sustain change, right? That's really what the leaders do. You have to take action. And if you can do that, basically it just builds upon itself and you get this virtuous cycle that happens. So those are my, at a very, very high level, those are the tips for the leaders. And then,
Good.
find yourself, someone that is a great leader, and learn from them, right? And the way you can tell if people are great leaders is that if the types of things that they put in place, if they're gone, that those continue, right? That's a great leader. And a lot of people will say, particularly people have military backgrounds, I've had those kind of drill sergeant, and a drill sergeant, I always ask them, they got me to do what I needed to do to be successful. And the real question is, if you pull the drill sergeant out of the equation, do you continue to do what is there? And the answer usually is no. I'm not going to do that. I learned some stuff, but I'm not going to do all the crazy stuff that has happened, right? And that's not a leader. That's basically someone that is maintaining an authoritarian type of position. So, and there are authoritarian leaders, although I think the authoritarianism and the leader piece are a little bit at odds with each other. But my model is if I remove that leader, does everything continue to just keep cranking away on its own? That's great. That's great leadership. So, let me tell you about the 7 P's of being an entrepreneur. And I'm going to run through these really, really, really quickly, Nathan, is that I've found, and I usually end up doing coaching of somebody kind of once a month on these. And these are in no particular order, but all of them are important. So the first thing is, the first P is provisions or cash, right? That you have to have enough cash. Tell people if you don't have, 18 to 24 months to invest in yourself and to your company to stay the course, because that's the time where most businesses go out of business. You have to stay the course. And I remember when we started up Magna Leadership Solutions, having that 18-month conversation, we had gotten some windfall, but we hadn't landed our sustainable, business. And it was an interesting call at 18 months of like, ooh, was this a mistake? And I said, everyone we've talked to, it's like an 18 to 24 month window. Let's stay the course. And man, at 19 months, all of the things that we had been, all the irons in the fire hit. And we got one big giant purchase order to develop a full leadership program for, I think it was 400 or 500 managers in Silicon Valley. So actually, and that kicked us off and everything sustained for that. But it was maintaining that. And a lot of people call me and say, hey, I got downsized unexpectedly, but I'm thinking I don't want to go back to corporate. I want to do what you do. And my first question is how much have you saved and how much you're willing to invest in yourself? And most of the coverage, it's like, I've got a couple months of savings, right, that I can kick this off. And I say, go look for a job, right? So, because what happens is after the savings run out, then basically your mind is not focused. So you have to have provisions. Second thing is you need to have a product, something unique that differentiates you, right? Some kind of shtick that basically says you want to come hire me or hire my firm or use my product, right? And when I interview people that say, hey, I want to come and work for you, I'd say, tell me about yourself, right? And everybody goes through, I have all this experience, I get these educations and bing, these skills and so forth. I just let them talk. And when they're done, and they don't have anything else to say, I just ask them one critical question. What will the next person that I'm going to have this conversation tell me that's any different than you? And the response usually is a very long pause, and it's like, well, they probably tell you the same kind of thing. So you want to figure out what's so unique about you that people are going to come. So you have to have a product, and it's usually a series of attributes. It's not just one thing that you can do. Third thing, as we've talked about, is you have to have presence, social media. People need to be able to find you. They need to be able to tell that you're legitimate. I know these days when I've talked to some of my recruiter friends that many of them, the first thing that they do is they just Google, right? Do Google Kevin Gazzara or Nathan Newberry, whatever. and see what comes up to see how legit they are. So you have to have this presence, and it's through publishing, it's through posting, it's through any interaction. It's so important. The next thing is you need to have a network, people. Yeah, that's the fourth P. And we already described how do you build your LinkedIn network. To do that, we're I think at 23,000 or so to do that. The Ready, Set, Get Hired process will tell you how to do that. The fourth thing is you need a publication. You need a hard cover book. That was one of the things that we did early on when we left the corporate world in 2007. The first thing we did is we wrote a book.
Yeah.
Myself and Dr. Lakhani wrote a book called The Leader of Oz. We took the story we started writing an academic book, but it was just so boring that we didn't even want to read it. So I said, hey, let's do something fun. And what we found out is both of our favorite movies was The Wizard of Oz, or the book, The Wizard of Oz. So I said, let's do that. We went on to Library of Congress. Nobody had written a book like that. And we basically we wrote this story about, it's a business parable about this company in Kansas and gets whisked away and dropped into Silicon Valley. And you got the wicked VP from the East and the wicked VP from the West. But we put all of our kind of academic knowledge in a very, very fun way. And we published it in hardcover because, our market is CEOs. And having a hardcover book where you can physically hand it to them basically says these people are legit. So write the book. And if particularly with AI these days and ghostwriters or whatever, tell your story, right? So have that. So it adds that degree of legitimacy. The fifth one is you have to have, that was the fifth one, was publication. The sixth one is you have to partner, partner with people that you can provide, that you can fill the gaps of what they need. And most people, particularly in a consulting world, end up trying to work with other consulting groups that are doing the same stuff that they're doing, and they're trying to get hired on as a contractor for them. What we found is we partnered with other organizations that were doing things like negotiations or influence that we weren't doing, and we were providing leadership stuff. So we augmented their products. They had already done the 20 or 30 years of work to build their customer base, and now we gave them the ability for them to expand it. We would co-brand our materials, and then they brought us into their customers, and in turn, we brought them into our customers. So it was really, really a win-win, because a lot of people think, I have to do it on my own. I have to find my clients. It's like, no, people have gone out and found the clients. Once you figure out kind of your product, what is differentiating for you, you have the ability to help them be successful as well. And then the last thing, the seventh P, is persistence. That you need to be persistent in the process. You need to have a coach or mentor. Don't try to do it on your own. Get some kind of guidance. One of the things that I do when I talk to people who said, hey, I've been online applying for jobs, and I do 20 or 30 of them a week, and I haven't gotten any response back. One of the things I ask them is, I'll give you an example. I did this with one of the clients. He was downsized, and I said, how much do you want to make? And he said, about 120,000 a year, 10,000 a month. We use that $2,500 a week. So tell me what you did last week. Right? Tell me the work that you did last week to get a job. And he went through everything that he had done. And I said, okay, if you had to pay somebody, particularly now that you know the results of that work, how much would you pay them? And he said, probably about $250, maybe. And that might even be high. So I said, if you're looking for a job you want to get paid $2,500 a week, and you're doing $250 a week work, is you need to find someone to help you to do that, or hire them, even though you don't have the money, so that you can really spend the time doing the $2,500 a week kind of work. And I gave him a challenge, and I said, what I want you to do is I want you to get 5 face-to-face conversations. He was in education with people that you know, and just have a conversation. He was working on his doctorate at the moment. And I said, just tell him about your research. Nothing like, not like I'm looking for a job. What do you got? No selling. Have this conversation. He went and had lunch. He set up lunches for 5 days with superintendents and principals of all the schools that he could get to. And he said, "Hey, I want to share with you the research I'm doing." And it basically showed his passion for the kind of job that he wanted, and I got a call back from him the following week after he'd been doing all of the normal stuff, applying for things for 4 months with no action. And he said, "I didn't get a job, but one of the superintendents called me back and said, we don't have a position, but I was really intrigued with the work you're doing. We've got a grant. I think it was about $30,000. We've got a grant that we've been looking for somebody to do research. Would you be available to, would you be interested to essentially, take the grant?" So that was 5 days that basically got him a nice $30,000
There you go. Yeah.
kind of payment. And the other thing it is it demonstrated his proficiency and knowledge, and then ultimately he, got a position in the school district.
Yeah. Man, oh man, this is good stuff, Kevin. I appreciate you giving us some tactical approaches of entrepreneurship, 7 P's of entrepreneurship, your tactics of growing on LinkedIn, and then also just like being omnipresent in all these different places. I think if you're looking for a job or you're looking at scaling or growing, it's the importance of being online, like you're talking about. That's real good. How can people connect with you and follow you more?
Lots of ways. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is you can send me an email. You can send it to kevin@magnaleadership.com, MAGNA leadership, magnaleadership.com. I always love having one-on-one conversations. And my promise to any of the listeners or the viewers of the podcast is you'll get absolutely no sales pitch from me. I will not try to sell you anything. I'll not try to get a contract. Is if I can be helpful, I'm in the late portion of my career. I'll turn 70 this year. And if I can help you be successful and point you in a direction, that's the reward that's useful for me. And if you want to work with me on a more day-to-day, week-to-week kind of basis, be glad to have a discussion with you on that. But let me point you in a direction and use some of the knowledge and experience I've had to kind of help you accelerate so that you can turn that 18 to 24 months down into something a little bit less. And then people, as you can follow me on LinkedIn, Kevin Gazzara. I think I'm the only Kevin Gazzara on there. You can follow me on Facebook on our business page, the Magna Leadership business page. Same thing on X is it's actually Dr. Kevin, spelled out DOCTRKEVIN. You can follow me there. Any one of those, you'll get every morning I do postings of useful management, leadership, entrepreneurial, coaching, mentoring kind of articles. That's the first thing I do. Usually post 2 or 3 of those a day. And just follow us. You'll get them. They all go, all the same articles go to all of the different social media. So you don't have to follow me on all of them. Just pick one, and you'll get that information.
Put those links down in the show notes. Go follow Kevin. He's a great guy, great knowledge. Appreciate you being on. Thank you for tuning in on the episode today. Also, check out in the show notes the workshop to help you scale and grow your online business. And we will see you on the next episode.